A while back, I saw an Instagram post describing a movie. It said, a boy escapes from a cupboard and goes to a castle, then uses a stick to fight a bald, pale guy with no nose. Didn't sound so exciting. And then I realized I was talking about Harry Potter. This is obviously hilarious, and I saw the same trend, hashtag explain a film plot badly, used to describe other famous books and movies, which were equally hysterical. But it brought me to think about how the way we describe, understand, and relate to things, how we perceive them, can so strongly affect how we experience them. More than just making a good meme, this idea has the potential to significantly change things in our lives, which brings us to today's talk. My name is Sruli Fruchter, and I'm graduating from Yeshiva University this coming May. Ever since I was a senior in high school, I've been obsessed with meaning. It was the focal point of my gap year in Jerusalem before college, and continued to be so afterward. But when I first got to campus, I encountered a difficulty. One of college's main goals is planning and preparing students for a career. And as a first-time on-campus student with no major and no direction, I wondered, how can I find a career, a profession, where I could make my work meaningful, where it would actually be meaningful? And that was a question my friends were also struggling with. I recall countless hangouts on the couch and meals in the cafeteria where we would talk about our futures. And to be frank, the answers were not very inspiring. I had this one friend, we all have that one friend, and he couldn't even sugarcoat it. Listen, he would tell us, we're going to get 9-to-5 jobs, sitting behind a desk, maybe in an interesting field involving something cool, probably not, and it's going to stink. But that's fine, because we'll get paid and find meaning somewhere else in our lives. It wasn't exactly an optimistic forecast, I'd say. Not at all. But the thing is, and here's the main thing, my friend really wasn't so far off. In a 2021 survey by Pew Research Center, only 17% of Americans said that their career or occupation contributed meaning to their lives. 83% didn't even mention it. For something that holds, or is going to hold, so much of our time, those numbers are really disappointing. Today I'd like to suggest that that does not need to be the case, that we can all find meaning in our work, no matter what we choose to do. So indulge me for a moment. Who here has ever watched Harry Potter by a show of hands? Okay. And who has ever read the books, or some of them? A cultured crowd, that's always good to see. Now, think back to the beginning of this talk, the way I described Harry Potter to you. I'm going to venture to guess that for most, if not all of you, that description didn't match what you've previously thought about Harry Potter. And the reason is because the way you tell a story affects how you experience the story. Harry Potter as boy who escapes from cupboard to fight bald pale guy is not the exciting story of a young wizard on a quest to save the wizarding world. So I ask you, what if the way we think about our work is like that first perspective of Harry Potter? What if in every single job, behind every desk, at every register, in every courtroom and hospital, there is a wondrous world of excitement, meaning, drama, and purpose waiting to be unlocked? What if our work could be so much more than how we currently think about it? The answer to these questions lies in a concept called narrative identity. Narrative identity is a theory that says we create and form our identities, our sense of self, and how we think about ourselves, by looking at the events of our lives, our upbringing, setbacks, accomplishments, all of it, and threading them into a cohesive narrative. To put it simply, we form our identities from the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. As humans, we love stories. We read crime and mystery novels, watch daring and emotional films, and tell the tales of history. Who doesn't love a good story? We all know what one looks like, how it can inspire us with hope and vision, leaving us with something more when it's over. And we also know what a bad story looks like, how it can leave us feeling kind of sad and empty, itching for something more. The thing is, we are constantly telling ourselves stories about the lives of our friends, the lives of our families, and the lives of ourselves. These stories are how we connect, interpret, and make sense of the various parts of our lives. The goal is to get back in control, to take the pen and sit as the conscious authors of those stories, because we are each the main character, the protagonist of our life. And if we want to change how we experience our lives, then we need to change how we talk about our lives. Narrative identity gives us that power, It gives us the power to find newfound meaning in every part of our lives. So, if we want to make our work meaningful, then we need to tell ourselves a better story about that work. Now, I have some familiarity with storytelling, and I know how powerful a good story can be. For the last 3 years, I've been a journalist for one of YU's independent student newspapers, The Commentator, first as a staff writer, then as a news editor, and now as its editor-in-chief. And in that capacity, I've written and edited hundreds of articles. People, events, news, all of it come to my desk, and I, along with my staff, need to find what significance each story has, why it's important, why it matters, what it means. But the article that we eventually publish is rarely the one we initially get. There's a process that needs to be underdone, that we need to do to discover that story. Take, for example, an article we published back in December. YU's registration process was flawed. One student decided to fix that. The article was about how when students register for their courses, they need to use the university system, which isn't perfect, to say the least. The search options, available information, and function are very, very limited. In response, a computer science student, a sophomore named Oz, designed and created a website that gave students way more information with a user-friendly format for them to research their courses before choosing them. On its face, it doesn't sound so exciting. It seems pretty mundane. But this article was one of our most widely read of that issue. Here's why. When we first heard about this article, about the story, the available information was that a student created a website that gave others more guidance in choosing their classes. Definitely piqued our interest, but we weren't sold that we found the story. Ultimately, the finished article was about how through ambition and grit, one student did something that really mattered for the students of today and for those of tomorrow. Oz always loved computers, but he almost dropped his first Intro to Computer Science course. And he didn't. Instead, he persevered, and he accomplished something really important for the student body of today and the student body of tomorrow. This is a story of personal and communal triumph. Now think about how our perspective on this can so significantly change by how we consider it. Boy makes a website that helps, or ambitious student addresses flaw in university system through dedication and creativity. One of these sounds way more interesting than the other, and that's by design. We at The Commentator, through creativity and reframing, gave our readers something more than just a quick read. Because that's what journalism is. It's a professional storytelling business. We look at the facts, we consider the context, and then we tell the story. And we need to look at our lives through the eyes of a journalist, a storyteller, a narrator. When we do that, when we create a story for ourselves and act to write it, we take agency over our lives. And we hold the opportunity to find the meaning that we crave. Because meaning, real meaning, is found in the purpose we give to the parts of our life. And I'm not just saying that anecdotally. In 2015, Personality and Sociology Review published an article on the incremental validity of narrative identity in predicting well-being. In English, it's a paper about how narrative identity can lead us to live a better life. And that's what the researchers found. What they found was that it all came back to redefining the different parts of your life, about giving purpose to the things that seem insignificant. What was the significance of dropping that college course? How did you feel after completing that summer internship or that project? What did it mean to you to move to that location as opposed to somewhere else? What went wrong? What went right? Why did it matter? What did it mean? The power is in the question just as much as in the answers. So how does this tie back to work? Well, let me give you an example. There's an individual I know who is an aspiring musician, but he hasn't found his success yet. He is truly a man of the arts. He loves culture, he loves museums, he loves music, he loves paintings. Truly a high-class individual, I think we'd say. But right now, he's working in the fast food industry, trying to make ends meet as he seeks to build himself as a musician that can live off of that as his career. And every day, he's challenged, personally and professionally. Professionally with colleagues and customers who aren't always easy. Personally, by his own cynicism and his own pessimism. But that's a journey he's undergoing. There's something unfolding here. There's a story, a narrative arc that's there. And I think as I describe this, it almost sounds like it's interesting. Perhaps we'd like to hear more about this. Now, this person is none other than Squidward Tentacles. And for those of us who are even more cultured than the Harry Potter folk and are familiar with SpongeBob, I don't think this is how we would normally think of Squidward. And the thing is, Because Squidward has not yet heard this talk. He doesn't know about narrative identity. Because with narrative identity, Squidward's work does not need to be meaningless and frustrating and upsetting. His work can be meaningful. And that is something that's open to us all. We tend to think of work in two pools. There's meaningful work and non-meaningful work. Meaningful work is usually that in the public sector. It's advocacy, nonprofit work, something devoted to a greater cause that we deem important. Non-meaningful work is everything else. I mean, I suppose you can throw in medical careers into meaningful work too. Great. We have a limited amount of options. For those who are going into the meaningful fields, you have the potential to join the 17% of people who find that their job gives meaning to their life. And for the rest of us, it's not promising. But with narrative identity, we can move past that binary completely. Because narrative identity says that you, no matter what your job is, no matter what your field is, you can make your work meaningful. Something that adds real, important value to your life. And it all comes down to the mindset you have. If you want to think like Squidward, or like my friend, well then that's what your life will be. That's how your work will be in your story. You'll trudge to work every day, 9 to 5, engage in a bunch of meaningless, tedious tasks to collect your paycheck. And this will not earn any chapter in your story. But narrative identity allows us to take it further. And it's about getting creative, about looking beneath the surface to discover what is the real story here. Personally, how are you personally challenged at work? Behaviorally, emotionally, professionally? There's personal purpose to be found in your workplace. How are you contributing to the workplace? Quantitatively, in terms of the actual role that you fill, there's a reason the company made that role, the organization made it. And qualitatively, in the energy that you bring to colleagues and customers and clients. You weren't born the day before hiring. You come to this job with a context, a history, a complexity. There's something special that you bring to that role. And think back to individual things and plug it in. And this is not about lying to yourself, far from it. When journalists try and look for the most whole and compelling truth, we're not lying. We're trying to find the greatest truth out there, the most compelling truth that our readers want and that our readers need. So why can't we do the same for ourselves? Rabbi Shalom Noach Berachovsky, known as a Slonimer Rebbe, told us this idea many years ago. In the Torah it says, "See, I set before you blessing and curse." And I think naturally we all have the same instinct. Where it at? Because I'll take the blessing any day of the week. But what he tells us is something profound, and it links to this concept perfectly. We each have a purpose, something unique that we are meant to do, a book we are in the process of writing. My purpose is unlike yours is unlike mine, and so on. You can't do what I can do, and I can't do what you can do. There's something specific, a story you're meant to write. But how do you access the blessing of that story? How do you make that story meaningful? A story you want to be a part of. Well, it comes down to your perspective. Let's take an example. And we can all plug in our own individual examples, and I think you'll see how this fits. Suppose you're working with a client or a colleague on a project. If you view that as if it's meaningless, and it offers nothing of substance to your life, then it's going to feel like a curse, tedious, burdensome, pointless. But if you think about what it offers to your story, what chapter heading will it be in? How are you growing? What are you bringing to the workplace, to society, to yourself, to your family? There's a reason it exists, and there's a reason you are there. If that's the mindset you approach, then it's going to be a blessing. Narrative identity leads us on the path to live a life of meaning, a life of blessing. So if you'll indulge me once more, everyone close your eyes, or don't, I can't tell you what to do, and pick an internship you've had, a job, an experience where it may have felt meaningless. And think, what did it give to me? What was I challenged to do there? What was I challenged personally? With my friends? With myself? If I'm writing my book, and this is something the publisher says must be included, where would I put it in? This is how we find a life of meaning. This is how we make our work meaningful. There's a story waiting to be written. It's already in progress. The life of meaning, the blessed life, is available to us all. And I hope we all have the strength and the courage to pursue it. Baruch Hashem, and thank you.